I'm making this video to share my experience attending the 2023 Wild Scenic Film Festival as a filmmaker. My name is Jonathan Cerna. I'm an aspiring documentary filmmaker and cinematographer. I love telling stories about nature as well as my stories on outdoor adventures. Now you're watching this on my channel called Out in the Wild, where I get to showcase my work, my time outside, as well as my behind-the-scenes look at all the shared experiences I have with others. Jumping right into this video, I want to talk about some of my favorite films that I got to watch at this festival. The first film I want to talk about is called Modus Avium, a mission to save California's last wetlands. This is a locally made documentary that talks about California's drought issue and largely the relationship between farmlands and their surrounding wetland areas. The relationship between these two are interesting to me because it is a prime example of how nature can coexist with our own human nature. Learning more about the relationship between the two helps me better understand that farmlands are not just a place for agricultural growth, but also a space where biodiversity can be rehabilitated and conserved. Another reason why I love it so much is that it hits home to me. It's so close to what it is that I do and the stories that I tell, in that all the birds that were showcased in that film are the same ones that I'm seeing every day pretty much, as well as the natural history being so closely related to what I've been researching for the past year. The next film that I want to talk about is called The Last of the Nightingales. It is a documentary about sound recordist Bernie Krause. The film serves as a biography of his upbringing as well as his experience in the film and music industry, and it largely covers his work spearheading soundscape ecology. Soundscape ecology is the study of the acoustic relationship between living organisms, whether it be human or non-human, and their environments. This is a movie that definitely excited the senses. One take that has really stuck with me since I've watched it is the presence of silence being the absence of nature. Now, if I recall correctly, Bernie makes the claim that there is a sort of noise to nature. There's a noisy nature. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, not like a noisy city, but in a way where there is literal audible noises. One should be able to hear the wind blowing through the leaves, the trees, the howling and growling of animals, the song and call of birds, the droning and buzzing of bugs, and also the flowing of water nearby. These days, Bernie is continuing to make the claim that the noise of nature is no longer loud, and that there is a problematic silence in nature that should be paid attention to. The last film that I saw that was absolutely tremendous is called All That Breathes. It is a different kind of documentary that follows a different kind of story, at least in comparison to a lot of the other films that I saw at the festival. It was a different kind of viewing experience because I was not only watching it with an environmental mindset, but more so a filmmaker's mindset. On one hand, the story follows the rehabilitation efforts of these individuals that try to help the population of black kites while still maintaining a living in the city of New Delhi. They're not part of a massive NGO nor a well-established nonprofit. They are just a handful of people that are trying to scrounge up the bare minimum resources needed to make any kind of impact on their local and symbolic parts of nature. On the other hand, it's also not a typical nature documentary in that there are no epic shots or an explicit urgent call to action. Instead of hearing an explicit call to action or watching images with clear motives, the film allowed me the headspace to formulate my own experience as it unfolded. There were long panning and zooming in shots that made me think about why what was being shown is so important. And there were shots that lingered on between pauses where the characters were interacting with each other, but they weren't saying anything at times. They were trying to process the information that they were both sharing with each other. And in those moments of waiting, uncut, there was moments of silence that were drawn out. And in that silence, there was an anticipation being built that made me wonder what they were going to respond with. And a lot of the times there was a lot of subversion of what my expectations were. I find it hard to talk about this film at length without sounding like I'm rambling on. And I think it's because the film itself is not like the nature documentaries that I'm used to watching. And it's different in a good way because it uses motifs from the cinematic world to help tell the story of nature. And what I like about the film is that it isn't necessarily concerned with a forward objective or a polished representation of a place or a thing. Now, to contrast my mouthful effort of trying to explain why I liked all those movies, I have one honorable mention, and that film is Wings Over Water in 3D. This movie made me feel like a bird. I had the 3D glasses on and the birds were right there with me. I felt like I was flying with them. And I mean this in the best way possible. That's all I feel like I really need to say. My original intention of submitting a film to the festival was a way for me to gauge whether or not I was a real filmmaker. I thought this would be a sort of rite of passage for me where I can confidently call myself a filmmaker. But what I learned largely was that filmmaking is a collaborative process. It was somewhat a hard lesson learned in that I was attending much of the film festival alone. Watching the films alone, going to the filmmakers lounge alone, and largely exploring the local area alone. What I would do differently is that from the films that I watched, I would look through the credits to see who was involved in the process, and then from there, figure out if any of those people are attending the festival. If they are, I would reach out to them, send them a message through an email or through social media, and arrange some kind of meeting where we can chat over some tea or coffee or even at the filmmakers lounge. Another observation that I made was that there were full-on crews there, and they weren't just there to network. They were also there to treat the film festival as a sort of little vacation and also a way to appreciate themselves as champions for making a film successfully. I like this nuance a lot because it gave me more depth to what filmmaking is. It's not just about the story that's being told, it's also about the storytelling process, at least from the behind-the-scenes kind of look. And what I mean by that is the people you're working with to make these films are not just co-workers, they're not just collaborators, but they're people that have a shared interest of what you have, and we're all coming together to try and make sure something manifests. What it made me think about largely is that it's not just work, it's also a way to facilitate a sort of life experience, and I want that for us. You know, now I have a new perspective for what film festivals are all about. I mean, practically speaking, they're a way for exposure to happen. For the film, for the crew, for the stories and the process. There is, of course, the hope that films are picked up for distribution, hope of making more connections for the future, and the hope that the stories that are being exchanged have some sort of impact on the people that are experiencing them. In the greater sense of what I've sort of intrinsically experienced, I really love what attending the Wild Scenic Film Festival has done for me. It changed my motives for filmmaking and my perspective of what filmmaking can do. I would love the opportunity to return to the festival, whether it be as an audience member or a filmmaker. And in saying that, this year I do have high hopes of working on more nature-related documentaries. And I mean to do them as a group effort rather than the solo endeavor that I've been on for the past year and a half. How and when will it manifest? Only time will tell. So how about you? Have you been to any film festivals? If so, let me know which ones and what movies you saw, because I'd love to keep watching more films this year and especially go out and see the film festivals themselves. And now that we're at the end of the video, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That being said, until next time, take care, get out in the wild.